Hey everyone, we appreciate you joining us in the huddle. I'm your host, 15-year NFL quarterback Gus Frerotte, alongside my longtime friend and co-host Dave Hager, where we talk to guests about how sports shape their life. Be sure to check us out on our website, huddleupwithgus.com, where you can listen to more episodes just like this. Now, let's join the huddle.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me on another episode of Huddle Up with Gus. I'm your host, Gus Frerotte, 15-year NFL quarterback, and today our guest is I'm very honored to be able to talk with her and get her opinion of how sports shaped her life, among many, many other things. But you can listen to our podcast on the newradio.com app or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. You can also find us on huddleupwithgus.com and the new 1631 Digital News. This is the 1631 Digital News studio where we're coming from. But today we have a Bronze Star honoree. We have a Purple Heart winner. I don't know if that's an award that, it takes a lot of self-sacrifice for that, but Melissa Stockwell is joining us today. She has accomplished so much in her life, and she leads people in the right direction. And if you want a leader, a patriot, this is the person that we need to talk to. So Melissa, it's an honor, and thank you for joining me on Huddle Up with Gus today.
Thank you for having me on. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
So really our show is about how sports shaped your life. I see that your hometown was Eden Prairie, Minnesota, which I know pretty well. I was up there a couple times with the Minnesota Vikings and really love Minnesota. It's a great state, and the Twin Cities are a great place to be. So tell me about, I think that's where you grew up, am I right?
Yeah, so I went to high school in Eden Prairie. Kind of grew up in Georgia before that, but I definitely consider Minnesota my home. And I'm out in Colorado now, but still try to get back there at least once or twice a year just to visit friends and take it all in. I love Minnesota.
So did you come from a military family?
I did not, no. I learned at a pretty young age, I was a big gymnast when I was younger. So, I know very much talking about sports, and gymnastics was my life. And before every gymnastics meet, the American flag is there. We hear the national anthem, and I just kind of fell in love with the country and the red, the white, and the blue. And so I decided pretty early on I wanted to join the military when I got older, to give back to a country that I learned to love so much at a young age. But no real military in my family.
So why gymnastics? Was it just something that when you were young you loved to do? I took our kids to try gymnastics when they were young, and I made them try every sport. But so why gymnastics for you?
My parents always said I was kind of jumping on everything and over everything. I think that's typically how young gymnasts start. And then they put me in the class, and I kind of fell in love with it. So it was my passion. Before school, after school, dreamed of going to the 1996 Olympic Games. It was definitely what I was known for, was Melissa the gymnast.
So my wife was a gymnast as well, and a cheerleader for the high school team, and because she could do all the flips and everything, but she loves both. And I hear her war stories about when she'd do all the bars and on all those kind of things, that how you would rip your calluses off all the time. Did you have those experiences as well?
Oh yeah, it was like a badge of honor. It's like you would rip off your callus, and then it was, do you keep going? Do you stop practice? We would go home, and they would always tell us to do is you put tea bags on those rips, we would call them, and they would heal faster. I don't know if that was a myth or what, but that's what we would do, and heal faster so we could be back out there the next day.
Was that chamomile tea or green tea?
I think any tea.
Any tea. So when you get to high school in Eden Prairie, what was that experience like, that first transition for you now? Because you said you were in other places, you moved around a little bit. My kid did the same thing. So sometimes those transitions are hard for people. Sometimes they're easy. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so we moved from Georgia up to Minnesota for me to start high school. And I look back at my Eden Prairie years with such fond memories. I think, I was an avid gymnast on a club team in Georgia, moved up into high school and started more high school sports, which are still, rigorous in their own mindset, but not quite as much as what I was doing down in Georgia with gymnastics. So I guess I found myself a little bit more. Before I was Melissa the gymnast, and now I was Melissa the gymnast, but I also was on the track team and on the diving team. And, I feel like I kind of thrived in high school to kind of figure out who I really was. And I mean, I have some of my very best friends today are from, meeting freshman year in high school. So I loved high school. I joke that, if I could go back and do it again, I would. I mean, I know some people love high school, some don't, but I did. I loved it.
Yeah, high school was a great time. There was obviously you're a mom and a wife, and you have responsibilities, and you travel all over to every place to tell your story. But in high school, there's really no, hey, I can't be late for practice. That's like my responsibility, right? So you get to really, really enjoy life, and it sounds like that you did. Did you have a mentor that really, of all the teams that you participated on, did you have a mentor of one of the teams that maybe you still talk to today?
I think thanks to social media, I do talk to a lot of, of my teammates from high school. And I think so I did a variety of sports in high school, but gymnastics was still my main passion that I did. And I think just the captains of the gymnastics team. I mean, I think as a teammate, especially a freshman, you come onto this team, you're new, you're trying to kind of fit in and find your way. And the captains of these teams and kind of how they lead the team and how they treat the teammates and the new athletes that come in, just to make them feel like part of that family. I mean, that's who I looked up to, and that's who I aspired to be. And as the years went on, and senior year, found myself as the captain of the team and wanting to lead by example for the new athletes that are coming in. So I think the mentors are those that come ahead of you, and they take notice of you. They kind of bring you in as their own, and that's just kind of what you want to carry on as you get older and look to those coming behind you.
Right. So as you get older, and you're going to, into your senior year, what are you thinking of that are your next steps? I know you went to Boulder, but how did you get there? And did you want to pursue athletics in college as well?
If I had my choice, I would have done gymnastics, all the way through college. My body had a different, a different mindset. You're no stranger to as athletes, you get injured, your body gets beat up, and after high school, my body was kind of telling me, no, I'm done. So I applied to a bunch of different schools. A lot of them I applied to did have gymnastics teams, just in case I could kind of go and get on. And my dad was like, why don't we go check out University of Colorado in Boulder? And we came out here for a weekend, and I mean, you can't really go back. You walk on campus and it's beautiful. I mean, you're like in the mountains. And I remember leaving, after that weekend and just thinking, this is where I want to be. I want to be surrounded by the mountains, the hiking, the camping, all the outdoors that comes with it. So it was a pretty easy choice once we came to visit.
Yeah, I mean, we lived in Denver. We lived on the south side of Denver when I played for the Broncos, and we used to go to Estes Park all the time. It's just, and you drive through Boulder to get up there, and it's just it's like you don't want to leave. It's like, do we have to go? Do we have to go back to the city? Don't really want to go back to the city. So I'm sure Boulder, can you explain what Boulder is to people? Because, unless you are there and understand it, you don't understand like the streams and the mountains and how it's built. And it's just so beautiful.
I remember I would sit in my chemistry class, Chemistry 101, freshman year, and look out the mountains and the Flatirons, they're like, it's almost like you can reach out and touch them. And I mean, I'll tell you, it was hard to stay in class and not just want to, go explore the mountains or take an hour and a half bus ride up to the mountains to ski in the winter. So I think for a lot of students, it's a challenge because you have all this pull to want to do all these outdoor things. So to try to, stay with the academics and, do that when you're not in the classroom. But I mean, yeah, I think unless you go to Boulder or really any mountain city in Colorado, it's hard to explain until you're there. But it's such a beautiful thing.
So I know you're a big sports fan. You were in all kind of athletics. When you get to college and now you're not playing, do you still follow a lot of sports, or are you talking to your friends about that?
Yeah, so when I went to college, I became part of the diving team. I was a diver in college or in high school, so I went on the diving team. My roommate, who I just met, was joining the crew team, so the rowing team. So joined that with her, and it was, up at 3:30 a.m. driving to the reservoir, like this little cult of people that are like going to this reservoir to row at 5 a.m. before your 8 a.m. class. So I feel like I was still active and still athletic. Kind of did a lot of rock climbing and camping and backpacking. And then sophomore year, joining the ROTC program. And then that is kind of where my niche began. So in the military, ROTC, you stay physically fit. You have PT 3 mornings a week. So that kind of became my new sports outlet, I guess. Not that the military is really sports, but you do have to be fit.
You have to be very fit to be in the military. There's no doubt about that. So as you're going through college, you're going through your academics, you're trying to keep active, trying to figure out, we all have that when we were in college. Luckily for me, I was drafted into the NFL and I didn't have to really figure it out. But so many people are trying to figure out their next step in life. So when you're going through all this, you're in the ROTC, you're doing crew, you're on a diving team, and all of a sudden you're approaching your senior year and you're trying to figure out what the next step is for you. So tell me a little bit about that senior year. And obviously we know that 2001 happened, and that was a difficult time because the night before I was playing on a Monday Night Football game. So against the New York Giants. So tell me about that experience your senior year and where it led you.
Yeah. So I know that we're talking about sports here, and I feel like I took a little bit of a break. So I'm very involved in sports growing up, big part of my life. And then there was like this chunk of military time. And now I'm back to, probably living a life of sport. But so senior year of college, September 11th, happened, and it was a Tuesday. It was ROTC day. I'm wearing my uniform. We are sitting in a classroom watching the news unfold on TV as the towers fell. And it was that day that our instructor, looked at all of us and he said, today, all of your lives are going to change. It's not a matter of if, but when you deploy to a foreign country and go to, basically go to war. So I knew that the uniform that I had become so proud to wear on American soil, I'd probably be wearing it on foreign soil as well. So my path after college was kind of being in ROTC, which is the Reserve Officer Training Corps, and it kind of sets you up to be an officer in the military. So May of 2002, I graduated with my college degree, and I was commissioned as an officer into the United States Army, and that kind of set my path up for me for at least the next 4 years. But a lot of people go on and make it a career. So once I graduated, I was part of the transportation corps. So I went off and did some military courses, officer basic basically to learn how to do my job in the military. And then in late 2003, I was sent to my first duty assignment, Fort Hood, Texas. And then in early 2004, I was deployed over to Iraq with the 1st Cavalry Division. So September 11th, it changed all of our lives. It changed the world. But it truly changed the trajectory of my own life because, a few years later, I did find myself, getting off a plane in Kuwait and stepping foot up into Iraq. So it truly changed. It definitely changed my life.
So when you became an officer, when you got out of school, you go right to the military. You're an officer. So do you still have to go through the same basic training? Is it all different? Because my wife's little brother was an Army Ranger, so we followed his path the whole way through. So what was that like for you going through the military, coming from college, which is different than a lot of people?
Yeah. So in the military, you basically have kind of 2 tracks. Well, there's actually multiple tracks, but a lot of people kind of know there's one track, the enlisted track, and then there's the officer track. And a lot of enlisted soldiers, they join the military, 18 years old, just out of high school and trying to kind of find their way in the world. And they are the ranks of, private all the way up to sergeant major, and kind of going through those enlisted ranks. And then a lot of officers, you come out of college as an officer if you have a college degree, and you start with second lieutenant, then you go up to, first lieutenant, captain, major, and then all the way up to general. And there are different paths along the way where enlisted can then become officers or warrant officers. So there are different paths that you can take, but the training is different as well. So I had a type of basic training, but it wasn't the typical basic training that, a private enlisted soldier would go through. So training, but just a little bit different than the tracks are just definitely different.
So what was it like for you? You said you were in the kind of the transportation side of the military, but you still have to learn how to shoot a gun. You have to do all those types of things. Tell me about that experience for you, because my little brother-in-law, he tells me a lot of those stories, but I'd love to hear your story about that, because I think it's so interesting that's a big part of what goes through when you have to protect yourself out there and you're protecting our country, but you have to learn all these skills. So tell me a little bit about that.
So in the military, you have all these different branches. So you have like the Army Ranger, which I think you said your brother-in-law is, right? And then you have you have the infantry division. There's, military police, intelligence, kind of down to the logistics side, which transportation is more logistics. But when you think about deploying over to Iraq or Afghanistan, I mean, it didn't matter. We still had to be trained. And, I wasn't, my particular job was not to go out and, and to into the wilderness and, and find the enemy. I was more about trucks and transportation and bringing supplies. But in a war such as Iraq and Afghanistan, you don't know, nobody's safe. And unfortunately, the roads are not safe, which is what, I found out firsthand. But so basically, to answer your question, we all go through marksmanship training. I had an M16. I learned to assemble, to disassemble. We had target practice. We had land nav. I mean, I had never shot a weapon in my life. And here I am with the M16 or M249, automatic weapon, and trying to, it's, I think when you first do it, you're like, oh, wow, like this is really cool. You paint your face with camo, you're in this training, you get these weapons and these target practices. But then you realize that it's all because you might have to actually use this someday, like in a real time situation. And so I think it's kind of, it's fun and cool at first, but then when you, personally realizing that this might be a real time situation kind of thing, like it's scary. I never thought of myself as, taking my weapon out and actually shooting it in a real life situation. So it's a little different. Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I know that in sports, you get knocked down, they tell you to get back up. It makes you tough. It does things that, if you don't play, you don't get. So you're obviously an athlete. You've worked very hard in gymnastics and crew and diving. I mean, all of it takes skill, perseverance, hard work. And then you're going to find yourself in a place where, man, can I do this? Can I get back up? Is it too hard? You just talked about ripping the skin off your hands. And do I quit or do I keep going? So that day where you had your accident, where you lost your leg, tell us about that day and the stuff that you went through early in life. Did it help you make it through that day? Because it had to be a horrific day for you.
Yes. April 13th, 2004, I'd been in Iraq for just 3 weeks, so not very long. And it was basically a routine convoy, through central Baghdad. And the vehicle I was in got struck by a roadside bomb, which to make what could be a long story pretty short, resulted in the loss of my left leg above the knee. And kind of through a series of events had a life-saving surgery in Baghdad. And it wasn't until I woke up from that surgery and I said, I think something happened to my leg, because I still really didn't know the extent of the injury. And that's when they said, it's gone. You don't have your leg anymore. And, I think it sounds so cheesy to say this, but like from moment one, and granted I was under a lot of pain meds, my mind hadn't really wrapped itself around what had happened. But very early on, I remember thinking I was glad it was me and not another one of my soldiers. I knew that I would be able to get through it and, make it through to the other side, because I had an amazing support system. And, I think looking back at my life before that, did sports play a part in that? I mean, yeah, maybe. I mean, I knew that I just had a strong team. And I think when you grow up in sports, the concept of team, the concept of teamwork and getting each other through hard times together. So I knew I had that team. I've always been very goal driven and very optimistic, like annoyingly optimistic for a lot of people, I think. So, I think that optimism that helped. I mean, I looked at myself and thought, I can do this. I'm alive and I'm going to make it through this. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it was all, unicorns and rainbows. I just lost my leg, but there was a lot of optimism when I think it could have gone the other direction.
Yeah, and I think that optimism led you to what you're doing today. Obviously, put you on a path to say, okay, I can do other things now. And obviously, there are a lot of veterans who come out who've had situations like yours that they don't have that inner drive like that. I think that we learned from sports growing up, right? Guys that go in at 18 that really haven't had a path or had a team, and then they're lost, and the military gives them some structure and some guidance in their life, but then they haven't had that background of how to get through things. And we see that PTSD come out in a lot of soldiers, and how do I deal with this and all those things, where I'm just trying to correlate how sports can help you through things a lot of times when you're younger, as we get older in life, because other people may be in a car crash and have an accident at home, and how do you get through that? And I think your story is so powerful, and I love that you go out and talk about it. So tell us about the next step for you after you're going through your rehab. You're trying to mentally get through all this. What was that process like for you?
So I think real quick, just to kind of take a step back to what you mentioned, talking about sports and how that can relate. So in sports, you don't go out to a game or go out to a race and always win. Like you have these you have games or gymnastics performances that don't go your way. You lose when you think you're going to win, and you have to learn how to deal with that. So I think that does help, like learning how to deal with things that don't go your way. So I think after, losing my leg, I was at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, and looking around Walter Reed, I saw so many other soldiers that were so much worse off than I was. They lost 2 limbs, 3 limbs, they lost their eyesight, and it really put things in perspective. And I looked at myself and I thought, holy cow, like all I lost was 1 leg. I mean, I'm so lucky. So kind of making a decision then to live my life for those who had given the ultimate sacrifice, to not let losing a leg stop me from doing the things I wanted to do. So that mindset started pretty early on, and it was really just perspective. I mean, looking around and seeing how lucky I was.
Were you able, when you're at Walter Reed and you're going through rehab and you're in the hospital, what were your conversations like with the other vets that were there with you as well that have had similar accidents? It sounds strange, but unless you're in the situation, you get it. There's a lot of humor. And it's almost like you have to use humor to make the situation okay, if that makes sense. A lot of humor, a lot of support as well. I mean, when I got there, there was someone who maybe had a similar injury a month prior. They are up with their prosthetic leg and they are walking. And here I am, just lost my leg, and they do everything they can do to help me, talk me through the process, to tell me what's going to happen and how I'm going to get through it. But then, you joke. We joke about the things that we can't do, the things that we can do. Like if there's someone next to me who's missing their arm, it's like this constant banter of, well, you can do that, but I can do this. I'm like, who has the worst injury between losing an arm and losing a leg? So you kind of find the humor in it, because I think that's really what gets you through a lot of times. But just the support, Walter Reed, the camaraderie between the soldiers, the nurses, the therapists, that is what got me through. And I can't say enough good things about just the great people that were there on my team and just wanting me to get better. Right. That is amazing. You talk about humor. I've been married almost 26 years to my wife, Ann, now. And humor gets us through a lot of things, and that we laugh and we cry and we support each other. But humor is the one thing that gets our family through a lot of different adventures, I should say. But so then you're healing up, you're coming back now. What you go and now you're going to be a Paralympian. Tell us about that next transition, because that's a big transition for you that a lot of people, don't get to make. I think you were the first veteran ever to do that.
Yes. So after I lost my leg, I learned to walk again. I was independent with my prosthetic leg, and I would lay in my hospital bed and just, I knew that I wouldn't really be myself again until I got back into athletics, just because I had been so athletic focused as a child and growing up. And about a few months after my injury, there was this presentation. There was a thing on the wall, and it was like, come learn about the U.S. Paralympic Games. And I was like, oh, what's that? So I go to this presentation, and they're like, if you train hard enough, if you dedicate yourself to a sport, you can compete on the world's biggest athletic stage for somebody with a disability. And I had dreamt of going to the Olympics as a gymnast. That didn't happen, but it's kind of like I had a second chance. So I walked out of that room knowing that somehow, some way, I was going to be a Paralympian. So kind of jumped in, head first, literally, into the swimming pool. I loved the water. It made me feel whole. And I decided that I was going to try and make the 2008 Beijing Paralympic team in the sport of swimming. I was medically retired from the Army, Purple Heart, Bronze Star, but making that jump from the military into that, back into athletics, it's the self-confidence it gave me, the self-worth. I mean, I cannot say enough about the role sports has played in my life, not just as a younger athlete, but after losing a leg, just kind of showing me how much ability is in my disability. I can still be in the pool. I can still run. I can bike. I can do all these things. I just have to believe that I can do it. So sports changed my life, very early on. And this many years later, competing in the 2008 Beijing Paralympics in the sport of swimming, transitioning to triathlon, competing in the 2016 games, in triathlon, going for the 2021 games in Tokyo. I proudly live a life of sport. It's kind of everything to me.
Yeah, no, I love it. And one thing I didn't ask you, and I really want to ask you, is that I was on your Twitter, and I was following. I was, as my kids say, creeping. Don't creep, Dad. But I knew I was interviewing you, so I wanted to look. And it seems like you're very close with your parents. And tell me about those calls that you had to make with your parents and how supportive they've been through your whole career. Because we know when we're kids, and I have kids that are older now, you travel everywhere with them. You live their life with them as they're going through that. So tell me about your parents and this whole process that you've just explained to us and how they dealt with it as well.
I can't imagine getting a phone call. So not a military family, and they were unsure of the military, and then I fell in love with it. So they fell in love with it because I was passionate about it. But then April 13th of 2004, getting a phone call from me that their youngest daughter has just been severely wounded in the war. And I, as a parent now, I get chills thinking about it. I can't imagine going through that. But they were, from that day, as soon as they could be by my side, they were. We reassured each other. Some days I needed reassurance. Some days they needed reassurance. And then, realizing together that life was going to go on. I was going to be okay. And then, standing by my side through this, at the beginning seemed like this insurmountable goal of wanting to become a Paralympian, but they've never, throughout my entire life, they've never told me, I don't know, you shouldn't do that because that goal is just too big. Instead, they say, well, let's do it, and let's do it together. And they are my biggest cheerleaders by my side. So, and they continue to be. On the stands in Beijing, on the race course in Rio in 2016. Hearing my parents, go Melissa. That drives me, just knowing how much they've been through, all the hours my parents spent, to and from the gymnastics gym, and the sacrifices that they made. And I think you think about your parents and what they've done for you, and you only hope that you can turn around and do that for your own kids.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes it really special. And then, what a great lesson that, now with you having children now, you're trying, I'm sure you're doing the same thing. So how are you, now that you've done so much in your life, you've experienced being in the Olympics, you experienced now running triathlons. How are you taking that and showing your kids that how to support a team, how to be on a team? Are they playing sports now as well?
So they're young, they're 2 and 5, 3 and 5. She just turned 3. So my son, he plays soccer and t-ball. He just broke his arm falling off the monkey bars last week. So a little break going into the winter, but I think I will be. I hope that my kids like sports. I hope that they find a passion and that they go that direction with sports. I think my husband and I are athletic. We want our kids to, find that. But if they don't, that's okay. But I will be adamant that they do something. I just think that sports teaches children so much about teamwork, about winning, about how to lose. And I will be adamant that my kids do play at least are involved in some sort of sports as they grow up, just because I believe how much it can teach children. But because there's, they know that I'm a little bit different. I only have one leg. They know that I swim, bike, and run a lot. They ask me why. I say, because I want to become the best in the world, and I have to, train hard to do that. And this morning they woke up and I'm on my bike doing a bike workout in the garage, and they come out and they say, "Go, mommy, go faster, mommy." Like they get it. At least I think they get it, or they will get it eventually. So, but to them, it's kind of normal. Like their mom has one leg and she likes to swim, bike, and run a lot. And I think eventually they'll realize why I'm doing that. They know I have a medal from the 2016 Paralympic Games, and they know that. They've seen it. I don't know if they fully comprehend what it means yet, but I love being a mom that looks a little bit different, but showing them firsthand that you can still get out there and dream big.
Yeah, I mean, we were the same way when our kids were little. We just said, hey, they're going to try everything. We taught them how to swim the first, as soon as we could get them in a pool. And then after that, we said, okay, we're going to try every sport. And, my daughter hated to run, so she became a goalie. And you don't know those things unless they try everything, right? She was a goalie in lacrosse and field hockey. But good luck with your kids on that, because I know it's not easy. So you've gone through all these things. Being a triathlete is super difficult. Real quick, last couple questions before you got to go. Tell us about the mental stamina it takes to be a triathlete, because it's not easy. And I think that people in sports need to understand that.
Yeah, so swim, bike, and run. I used to think triathletes were crazy, because who wants to do that like all at the same time, all on the same day? Right. But it's amazing how addicting it is. And you get out there, you swim, bike, you run, you cross that finish line, and you're like, holy cow, like I did it, and I'm a triathlete, and the camaraderie on the race course. But it's not easy. I feel like a lot of people who say they can't do a triathlon, you can do a triathlon as long as you can swim. You're not going to win the thing, but you can get out there and swim, bike, and run. And who cares if you're one of the last ones to cross the finish line? But like, you can do it. But if you're competing at a high level and an elite level, it's hard. I mean, you swim as fast as you can. You get out. You go to the bike. You bike as fast as you can on the run. I mean, you have to dig deep for the endurance, for the stamina, for the strength to get to that finish line as fast as you can. And I mean, I think a lot of us have our reasons for doing the things we do. And when it gets hard for me out there on that run, I think about why I'm out there. And I mean, I'm out there because I can be. I have 3 limbs. I want to prove to myself I can do it. I want to prove to others that just because I'm losing a leg doesn't mean I'm sitting in a room, with my lights off, but I can still be an athlete. I can still get out there and get to that finish line. And, hopefully the hard work, the day-to-day pays off, and back on that podium again in Tokyo. So yeah, it's a good life.
Yeah, I'm sure, because I think a lot of things were canceled through COVID. I'm sure this year has been a little tough for you. Just training. I don't know if you've been able to compete at all. I raced very early on in February in Australia, and then everything else was canceled. There was a local race in Loveland, Colorado, just on Sunday. And it's not a race we would typically do, but we just wanted to race. It was still happening, and we found it, and it was just great to be back out on a race course. Well, that is awesome. Well, one of the most amazing people we've ever had on the show, and I appreciate you joining on Huddle Up with Gus, Melissa Stockwell. So before we go here, Melissa, can you please tell us about your charity? I think it's Dare to Try, and how all of our fans can reach you, or how some people that maybe have a business want you to come out and speak. So please give us that information so that we can share it with all of our people, all of our listeners.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I have a nonprofit out of Chicago called Dare to Try Para Triathlon Club, and we get other athletes with physical disabilities into the sport of triathlon. So providing adaptive equipment, coaching, and really just showing youth, adults, injured service members just how much ability is in their disability and that they can still become triathletes. So the website there is dare2, tri.org. And we always there's volunteers, there's programming, a lot of opportunities if you're interested. And then personally, so, social media is mstockwell01. If you'd like to follow along with, my journey to Tokyo 2021, you'll see some pretty cute kids along the way. And then my website, just melissastockwell.com, does have, contact tab that goes, I have an agent that I work with, and I do speak all over for various companies, organizations, sharing my story in hopes that others are inspired by it. And if you want to take it one step further, I did just write a book. It's called The Power of Choice. And it's out. It's out on Amazon, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It came out in February. But it kind of talks about my story, the obstacles, overcoming them, and just how we all have the power to choose our own lives and what we want to do and just to make the most of it. So hopefully, if you're interested, you'll read it and be inspired.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think The Power of Choice is what a good title, because when I played for the Minnesota Vikings, we had a gentleman come in and speak to us, and his line was choices, decisions, consequences. Right? Yeah. We all have a choice to make, and those decisions lead to consequences. And even if you make the wrong choice, you can go back and redo it and have better consequences. But what you've done for us, thank you for serving our country. Everything that you've done, we can't appreciate you more. Please keep telling your story. Please keep helping all those other veterans out there. I know you've worked on the Wounded Warrior Project as well. And thank you for all of your service and joining us on Huddle Up with Gus. Everyone, Melissa Stockwell, we appreciate her. You can listen to the podcast on huddleupwithgus.com or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Join us at the new 1631 Digital News Studio here. But we appreciate you listening. We appreciate Melissa Stockwell. Congratulations on all your accomplishments and good luck in the future as well. We're going to follow you all the way to Tokyo. So everyone, have a great day. Thank you again, Melissa, for joining us in the huddle.
Thank you for joining Dave and I in the huddle. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you'd like to hear more podcasts just like this, go to huddleupwithgus.com, where you can find our social channels, subscribe to hear more, buy our merchandise, and join our exclusive huddle through Patreon. Please join us next week when we talk to more guests about how sports shape their life.